Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 in my next small step RP-1 career mode playthrough. We are just moments away from the momentous launch of Thomas Reed and Lisa Kim on board a Gemini lunar spacecraft, which is headed out towards the moon to rendezvous with the lunar skiff for the first lunar landing of crew, which is just, I'm so excited about. So 3, 2, 1, ignition. And we have liftoff. Liftoff of a Paladin 3 spacecraft. 5 E1 engines have cleared the tower, and we are on our way. This is pretty much the same mission profile that I have done before, with obviously a little bit of a twist at the end. But the Gemini L spacecraft was something that I originally designed just to clear the orbiting the moon contract early, before I ever got Apollo, because the regular Gemini service module and engines and all of that is obviously not even close to capable to getting out towards the moon, but all of the fundamental systems, the scrubbers, the fuel cells, everything else technically should work for all that time and all that way, right? Like, there's nothing stopping it. There's no like short-lived components that are going to die no matter what you do. So there's no reason that you can't just pack on extra stuff, pack on a bigger engine, find a different mission profile and architecture that works for you, that you can then send out to do whatever missions that you want. And for me, that is sending a Gemini out to the moon. And so that is what we did to get out there a little bit earlier than I otherwise would have, because I'm still making up for lost time. It is 1975, and that means that we are about 6 years late for this particular mission, because obviously we are trying to recreate something like Apollo 11. Like, I don't even want to go through like the whole historical timeline of the Apollo missions, because this is still not that, and I'm still planning on doing Apollo architecture lunar missions in the future, especially to support landing like base structures and other long-term habitation modules. I think is going to work a lot better with gigantic Saturn-style rockets, really big service modules, Apollo spacecraft to move a lot of crew around, all that sort of thing. So yeah, that's something that I'm still thinking about. So there may still be, like, just for historical, we have upper stage, hot stage, second stage hot fire, and then the separation of our first stage engines. So there may still be a historical recreation of like Apollo 11 just to have done that, right? Because this is not necessarily a like let's walk through history sort of thing. There's plenty of people who have done the same sort of thing, but a lot better than I ever could. But this is something that that might be something that I want to experience, like the actual full Apollo architecture and all of that. We do have the it's fine, I think. We do have an Apollo test coming up, one uncrewed test of the Apollo architecture, and then a full-on Apollo 1 spacecraft with the crew that has finally been trained. So I've been complaining about that for a while, but go figure, when you actually start time warping through a bunch of launches of large rockets, you finally get there pretty darn quickly. So yeah, there's probably going to be more of that. So I'm a little bit like, we'll talk a little bit about Apollo and some of the big milestones that happened there, because we are doing our very first crewed landing on the moon. But this is more of a advanced Gemini concept type mission, where it was theoretical. It was very theoretically put together, the way that this was designed, and this is fairly similar to that. Oh no. Why? Stop. Disengage. Stop. Oh my gosh. Oh, I hate you so much. All right, so small bit of a reload there. because I had some technical issues with this that were not really my fault, I don't think. This fairing is clipped a little bit inside, I guess, and causes this rocket to tear itself apart. So I am going to do this manually. So we are going to stage, and I'm going to time warp through. There we go. Now we're going to fire everything else up and reset the guidance to make sure that we are all correct, and there we go. Yeah, so the last couple times I did that, that just tore itself apart, and that is, like, that's silly. Like, that this has worked before, I don't know what the issue is. And also on this particular version of the run, I had a transient shutdown on one of my LR87 LH2s, so yeah, that's cool. But it looks like we have enough Delta V to cover for all of that. This is a very capable system, thankfully. So yeah, that's I don't know, like, when I do things like that where the fairing just doesn't let go at all, like, it was doing that thing where it was like holding on to the upper stage and wiggling it until it like tore off all of the RCS and all of that. So it was very silly, and it was not recoverable. So I'm not going to feel too bad about reloading and trying that again with manual staging. But yeah, in any case, we are just about to orbit. Thomas Reed, Lisa Kim, capable pilots making their way up there. Lisa has been here before. She is our scientist, and Thomas is our pilot for the mission. They are both experienced astronauts, but Lisa has been around the moon at least one time. I think she was our first moon orbiter. And there we go. We are now in low Earth orbit and ready to make our transfer out to the moon to meet up with the lunar skiff out there. So this is another thing that has no MLI layers. So this is also not going to survive getting out to the moon. By which I mean I couldn't like use it to break into the orbit of the moon and save that Delta V. All of this is going to boil off by the time it gets there, which is fine. So I'm going to create this node, and we see that is going to put us, focus target, into a lovely spot where we crash into the moon. Let's make sure we are orbiting in the correct direction. Put this just so that it crashes into the moon and gives us, doesn't make us spend too much Delta V to get back out of there. And there we go. Warping around for our transfer towards the moon. Very neat shot. So yeah, this is probably one of the last flights of my Gemini architecture. I don't see any huge reason to keep doing this now that we are not chasing after particular milestone contracts. Because the Gemini is lovely, and it is a lot cheaper than it is flying Apollo. So I'm trying to debate whether I want to keep flying Gemini for cheap access to space, or if I want to start using like the generic like Mark 1-3 pod, which is about 1/3 the price of the Apollo pod based on what it looked like to me. I don't know if that's like deliberate that's how that works, or if it's like that's just an oversight, that it's so much more expensive to fly an actual Apollo capsule than it is the Mark 1-3. But if it's intended, then I don't know why I wouldn't just use Mark 1-3 as my primary access to space with my self-rolled service module and translunar injection stage and all of that stuff, and just using that going forward. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't use that if that is the case, because that's, you know, so much time spent building that if we don't have to spend it, then I don't know why I would. So yeah, we are just about wrapped up with this burn. And there we go. Perfect. So there we are. We are on our way to the moon. Let's see what that trajectory looks like. It looks perfect. Absolutely perfect. so let's go ahead and separate the Lunar Gemini. All right, that does that, and that probably actually sends itself into a trajectory that's not going to hit the moon anymore. Yeah, I didn't think that part all the way through. Because it still has retro rockets on it, which is pretty silly. Okay, so that is now on a lunar impact trajectory, but unfortunately so is our Lunar Gemini, so let's go ahead and get that fixed. But at this point, we want to try to match the orbit of the lunar skiff. So what I'm doing is I'm just using RCS right now to get ourselves into a capturable trajectory. So this actually is pretty close, but probably not going to be close enough. So yeah, this looks good, but what I'm going to do now is we are just going to bring this down to get us, oops, that's a little too much. But you can see that thing swings around like the arm on a clock. There we go. You can see this swinging around now. When you have it, like when you have the orbit line lined up well enough, you can see that kind of moving around. Killing me a little bit that I can't see what my second intersect is, and I don't know what's making that happen, but whatever. We'll figure that out when we get a little bit closer and there's a little bit less in between us and that. But yeah, this is the general idea. You've seen me done this kind of rendezvous before. We are just going to come into the orbit a little bit high, and then we are just going to let it sync up whenever it syncs up. Okay, so that is all set. Oops, do not time warp yet. We want to do a couple of things. First, I want to point our butt at the sun, because we do indeed have stuff in MLI layered tanks inside, yes, but they are indeed MLI layered, or they are indeed liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, which can burn off, or boil off, I should say. So we're going to enable this crossfeed that gives us both sets of our RCS, which is lovely, and we are pointing the sun to be up, I suppose. I don't think I'll ever figure out what that actually wants of me. And then we can just go in and we fix our batteries. And there we go. So turn off the maneuver planner and all that. And there, that looks pretty darn good. We have 14 days of food, perpetual electric charge, not running down those batteries yet, which is nice. Water is perpetual, oxygen perpetual, 14 days of liquid hydrogen, 14 days of liquid oxygen, which should be plenty longer than what this mission is going to take. Much like Apollo, we are going to be on our way there for almost 5 days, and then we are going to be in orbit of the moon for probably about a day, then our landing, and then back home again. Which will be another 3 or 4 day journey. So probably 10 days all told for this mission, which should leave us with plenty of buffer time, hopefully. But yeah, that is it. This is our Lunar Gemini, which we have used before, and we are on our way now towards the moon to do all the big science. Well, a little bit of science anyways. We've got a whole bunch of new science experiments queued up, but they're not ready yet. But this is what we are doing to get out towards the moon. So let's move it on there. All right, just a couple hours away from our encounter with the moon. Or we are just about at our encounter with the moon, I should say. But what we need to do now is make sure that we are encountering in the right way. Because as you see, all of our flipping around has changed that a bit. All right, this is the behavior I was hoping for, with it like flipping around like a clock like that, where you can just kind of see it rotate around to wherever we want it to be, because we are matching its orbit in one place. We know where it's going to be. We know that it's going to be right about here, but we are just changing our orbit ever so slightly so that we just about circularize our orbit, but also get ourselves a nice close encounter. Let's just tweak that down with just the numbers just a little bit. So that's a relative speed of almost 30 meters per second, separation of 3.3 kilometers. I think we can do a little bit better than that, but honestly, for our straight into our insertion burn around the moon, that is actually a really good encounter. So I will just correct that when we get a little bit closer. So yeah, execute that node, and we are on our way in. So yeah, this is like I mentioned a little bit before, this is kind of a wonky combination of Earth orbit rendezvous and lunar orbit rendezvous, where instead of doing the Earth orbit rendezvous part to meet up these parts of the spacecraft, we just go directly out to the moon for all the reasons that we mentioned before, of having this module already tested and working just fine with plenty of extra delta V and all of that. So the only thing that could make this a whole lot better is if this actually also had a whole bunch of the ability to transfer fuel across, but I don't think that this particular docking mechanism allows that. And if it does, then there's crossfeed issues in between the tanks and the docking mechanism that I was not able to have that done. So it's not something that I'm like worried about, but it is this module is slightly over provisioned for what it needs to do, so it has a little bit extra of this NTO and Aerozine 50 fuel, which I know that my lander uses as well in a different mix, but that's not super important. But yeah, I think that we should be just fine. The way that we're going to operate this is this Gemini craft is going to do the vast majority of the how do you put it? The vast majority of the orbital maneuvers and rendezvous and all of that. So that is going to get taken care of by this thing, while the lander only really needs to focus on getting to and from the surface, which, you know, makes sense to me, right? All right, so we are burning into the orbit of the moon. And yeah, so I'm just wondering what I can do in the future. So if you guys let me know in the comments what you think about using the generic Mark 1-3, because I've been using historical architecture pretty much exclusively up until now, but Apollo is so damn expensive that it's making me question all of my decisions and whether or not that is indeed the right move. So let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below, and we'll get this figured out. So okay, here we go. Now we have a good encounter, and looks like I can just use my RCS, and I'm just tweaking this slightly so that we have a bit of a closer encounter. There we go. We are back down to 1.9 kilometer of separation, and we will fix that a little bit more, I think, up at the ascending node to make sure that we have the correct inclination, because we have 0.2 degrees of relative inclination, which is not really that much, to be perfectly honest, but we want to make sure that we have that as little as possible. That is a thing that would be holding us back. And we are rotating around the moon. And yeah, this is it's not far from us, like it's pretty damn close. So we're coming down on it pretty quickly here. But one thing that I want to remember to do is we can open up. I have better communications here, but I haven't needed it yet. So this has a built-in level 4 antenna, which I guess I forgot to upgrade. So this must also be, that's also level 4. That's a bummer. But yeah, those are built-in antennas, and so it's communicating with the LunaNet as we speak. Actually, it's bouncing off of the lunar skiff, which is fascinating. But yeah, there's no big science to send back, so I could use this big Gemini S-band antenna, but it's not necessary. So now I just want to point us normal, and we are going to once again do some tweaking on the final parameters of our intercept. So all I'm doing now is I'm just using the RCS to bring our relative inclination all the way down. And there we go. Our inclination is just about as low as we're going to be able to get it. It just started going back up in the other direction, so that's fine. 0.01 degrees of relative inclination it's fine. That's like so not a big deal. So now I'm going to point us prograde. and try to finish off this intercept. There we go. That's changing a bit. All right, so here we are flying just over the surface of the moon. It's time for us to get into position to rendezvous our target. So now it's down. We are close enough, just a little bit less than 4 kilometers away. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use our engines to push our retrograde marker basically onto the our target. Boop. And that should give us a very close intercept. So you see that is just as easy as that. So now we are just moving in the direction of our target at a very stately 13 meters per second. A little bit of a lag spike as we move into the physics range of the other vessel. And there it is. There's our lunar skiff coming on up. Thankfully, we have the sun. And there it is. That is just about our closest approach. So I'm going to try to cancel out our velocity at this point. Very carefully as this thing flies past. And boop. Good enough. Good enough for me. Now let's switch over to docking mode. Parallel minus. Force roll of 0 degrees. Oh, wait, is it at 90? That seems right, and that changes the relative directions and all that, so that's important to... Whoops, hold on. Do the thing. I'm pressing the wrong controls. All right, so once again, using the Navyfish docking alignment indicator feels like cheating. It's so good. But all you have to do is point yourself at parallel minus towards a target with smartass. I do a force roll of 90 degrees, which puts the little indicator that we are facing up relative to our target right here. And then it's just move this the little prograde marker up towards the green arrows until the green hash marks move into the direction that you want, and then you just want everything lined up in the center. So that just means that we are moving, it's moving up and towards that direction. Like, so it's like it pulls kind of. So when it's up and left, it will move the green arrows down and right. And the amount that you are off of the center is how fast it will move off. So get a little forward velocity on this because we are just about there. So we are now moving, the CVEL is the horizontal, the direction towards it, relative velocity. And that tells us that we are moving down towards the lunar skiff at 0.5 meter per second. So we are just canceling out any other, we are just centering ourselves completely perfectly and moving this on down so that it's all lined up. And there you go. So yeah, if you have trouble docking, try this, because this has helped me learn how to dock in ways that absolutely nothing else has been able to do. So yeah, just time warping forward, physical warp 4 as we move slowly down. We have still another 40-50 meters to go. I can't quite see the number, but you can see that we are fairly well aligned. I'm going to have to do a small correction in just a moment here. Very cool. That is excellent. I love this. But yeah, I love being able to do this looking straight out this window and have that actually be not only a cool visual, but it's also useful. Like, I actually find it very useful to do that. Like, if I can have this up here, there's a mod that, what is it? Raster Prop Monitor, which actually gives you a whole bunch of, I don't think it would on this, but it turns at least in the base game, a whole lot of the different capsules into having little digital displays that are actually functional and clickable and all of that. And one of those things would actually be this window here. There is that integration, which is just a really cool thing to have on there, like the actual functional display as you are coming into dock. So yeah, just slowing down our approach down to 0.15 meters per second because we want this to be nice and slow and easy. Making sure everything looks right. Adjusting our guidance in, and there we go. We have a lock. We have docked with the lunar lander, the lunar skiff. All right, so we are now docked up with the lunar skiff, so it's time to check systems, basically. So we want to make sure that this is going to be ready for us to go. So we have avionics is on, that's good. We'll turn on the lights, that sounds fine. Turn on habitat, we want the scrubber on as well. Crew report, sure, why not? Let's do crew reports. Analysis. There we go. Visible imaging. Temperature scan. Yeah, see, there are a couple science experiments on here. I just don't know where they are. Oh, look at that. There's a little... I did hide them on here. Okay. Let's see what else. Magnetic scan, mass spectrometry, telemetry analysis. Got 4 copies of supersonic flight analysis, which is probably not great. Okay, so there we go. That is all wonderful and fantastic, and I love it. Let's see. Actually want to turn off... I'm going to turn off this RCS while I am trying to rotate this around. Because I just don't want to use the fuel on board this vessel just yet. We'll turn off this engine. There we go. Okay, now I can just use the service module to rotate around, and what I'm going to do is we are going to point right now up towards the sun. Rolling from here, because that is the orientation that I am going to be leaving the spacecraft in. So here's the thing. There's not actually any reason for me to have these two things docked together, except because it makes it a little bit easier to hold it steady, right? Like there's no you can't transfer crew through the Agena docking collar. And the Gemini nose mechanism. You'd be crawling literally through a parachute and all of that. So just like in the potential of using the Langley Light Lander, we are going to EVA across. And so I am going to be sending our scientist Lisa Kim down to the surface, and she is going to be the first Kerbal on the moon, first astronaut, human. They're Kerbals. Come on. On the moon, and going to be performing that all-important first bit of science and planting the flag and all of that. So yeah, there we go. This should be, yep, habitat is enabled, lights are on, scrubbers on, everything looks pretty good. So let's hop her out. EVA is out of nitrogen. Is that actually true? It is not true. Okay. And there we go. So yeah, there's just a small EVA above the lunar surface that we are going to do before we move on down to our lunar landing. And isn't that neat? Let's get ourselves a little picture here. Fantastic. And she looks like she is having a great time, and who can blame her? So yeah, this is only a one-person lander can. We have crew report going through. EVA reports are all done. We've done that. But yeah, she's going to be able to take the surface sample as well, which is very exciting. But yeah, time for her to climb on board. the lander can, which once you're actually outside of it with a Kerbal, you can actually see how big this stuff is. Like even this, just a little lander can is actually fairly hefty in comparison. There we go. We are inside. We are ready to go. Can extend this antenna once again. And yeah, another interesting thing is that this craft has plenty of battery, oxygen, food, water, all that sort of thing, but it doesn't have the ability to generate any of those resources. So what's on board this vessel right now is all that we are going to have available to us. Oh man, how freaking cool. So yeah, we are here with Lisa Kim inside the lander can, which this is just the what do you call it? The stock thing, but that is still pretty damn neat, and I am pretty damn excited. Yeah, so she only has what she has to get down to the surface, which is fine and going to be fine, but we want to remember that we only have one ignition on this engine, so we're going to have to make this entire burn in one go. So what I'm going to do is we are going to just stay attached for a little while, but we are going to turn on the thing to see where exactly we are going to be landing, because I'd like to make sure that we can get the science that we want. So Mare Nubium is where I kind of had in mind that I'd like to land. It looks like there's also a bit of sun there, so that's not so bad. It's kind of sunset or sunrise. I don't really know which one, but if we just go like all the way over it. Here, I want to try to like center us in Mare Nubium, because I want to say that Mare Nubium is one of the ones that we have not been to yet. Let's see, telemetry analysis. Okay, we have been to Mare Nubium. Let's see. But we have not been to Mare Nubium with any of the good what do you call it? Science experiments. So we will see if that is something that we can get. We could also just land straight on the Midlands, it looks like, and get a really good set of stuff. And obviously there's been no crew report anywhere, but yeah, so we've Mare Nubium would be good. We could also just go a little bit further out in this direction and get Midlands. There's a lot of Midlands and Lowlands here, which makes me a little nervous, but that should be all right. But Mare Nubium is kind of a fun, interesting name target. We can find the Midlands later on, so I'm just kind of putting this kind of in the center of Mare Nubium so I have a general idea of when that's going to be. And now we just warp around until we get there. All right, 5 minutes until our scheduled descent towards the moon. We see we do not indeed have any sun whatsoever, which is fine because we're still going to be coming around for a couple more minutes. But it is time now to separate and make sure all of our systems are working before we do anything crazy like start descent towards the moon. So let's undock. Boop. All right, so that leaves Thomas Reed, kill rotation. Just stay exactly where you are, my friend, and we will be right back. Lisa Kim will be descending with this vehicle, and we will hopefully, everything should, in theory, work out just fine. All right, so systems test. Nothing works. What is happening? Thrust limiter. Ah, that's what happened. Okay, so I don't know how I must have fat fingered that one too, but I managed to turn the thrust limiter all the way down on my RCS, and that made it just not work at all. So any freaking way, we are above Oceanus Procellarum, and I am trying to figure out now what the heck happened to Mare Nubium, which is where I am intending to go. Oh, it's right there. Okay, so let's see. This is all Mare Nubium from here to here. So let's say right there is the target. That is where we are going to plan to start our burn, anyways. And like I said, this is going to be a very dicey sort of thing. because I am traveling at 666 meters per second in orbital velocity around the moon's surface at an altitude of 22 kilometers above the terrain. 30 kilometers of Apolloon, and we have only 1,869 meters per second of delta V total. So that means that I cannot have more than 200 meters per second of steering and gravity losses for this landing, or else I will crash and explode, which is not super awesome. But that is the general idea for this landing. So we are going to... yeah, it's gonna be a little bit dicey, and I'm not gonna be able to do this quite as I had practiced in my dress rehearsal mission, but this should be fine because I will be able to pitch up and down using Smartass, and I will be able to control our descent in that way. Let's just get us all situated here, and what we can just do is put a pitch of plus a bunch of degrees and just kind of follow this node down a little bit here. So we are about a minute away from this burn. I'm switching our camera out, and this is what we are looking for. This is the preparation for our landing. We have the Gemini spacecraft in the background. Thomas Reed looking on, wishing Lisa Kim very well in her descent to the lunar surface. But yeah, this should be it. We are still above the lowlands, but by the time that we finally land, we should be hitting the Mare Nubium. So just a couple more seconds until we get this ready to go. And yeah, so what I think I'm going to do is we're going to start with a relatively low thrust on this, because like I said, we cannot how to put it, we can't shut the engine off and then turn it back on again. So this has to be one continuous burn from here until the surface, and we are ready to go. So I am just going to fire up the engine, and there we go. Now we are coming down, and you can see the Gemini spacecraft hurtling off, continuing on its orbit as we begin to slow down and head down towards the surface. Our vertical speed is increasing, which is good. We actually want that to increase for now. So here's how I'm going to do this. We're going to start by just like kind of halting our horizontal velocity as much as we can. And in so doing, that's going to make our trajectory a little bit more ballistic. You can kind of see that it's gotten a little bit ballistic already. I'm turning off that so we can kind of see how we are doing, because we want to be like, ideally we'd be coming straight down at a slow speed, right? So that would be kind of the ideal. So what I'm going to do is we are actually going to point ourselves up a little bit, because we are heading up, and that's not actually great. All right, suicide burn countdown is coming rapidly towards us. And the suicide burn countdown is what we would want to be pointing directly surface retrograde for. And we're going to be trying to, the way that I've done this successfully in the past is I've kind of managed this suicide burn countdown to the point where it is like right upon us. And then I go ahead and make that, and then I kind of like flutter the throttle a little bit to keep us going at about the speed that it expects us. And that has gotten me down safely before. So I'm actually going to cut the throttle quite a bit at this point, because I don't want to go too hard on the throttle and run us out of gas this early, because if we run completely out all the way up here, then we are in a pretty tremendous amount of trouble. So this thing I can pin over here, this bit of information, and that shows us where our throttle is. So we're at 37%, our thrust is 17 kilonewtons, and so long, we have no ignitions left. But yeah, we have a minimum throttle, I think, of like, it's in the tens, I think. I don't know exactly what it is, but I don't want to go too low because I don't want to chance missing it. Or not missing it, but I don't want to chance shutting off the engine and then destroying poor Lisa Kim. Although we could still get out. Like there's the abort capability right now is to decouple this the descent stage and then use the ascent stage to head back up to rendezvous with the Gemini. But we are coming up on the let's turn this back up. We have 2 minutes until impact, and we have more fuel than that, so we need to keep burning. Suicide burn countdown is coming up. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say here except for my palms are sweating a bit. I've done this once before, but I was able to kind of like time it better with the suicide burn countdown. So what I'm doing now is I'm just throttling down until that suicide burn countdown gets to just about where we want it, down to right now as if we had just fired up this engine from the start. Time to impact 1 minute 20 seconds, and we have 1 minute and 45 seconds worth of fuel. I am increasing the thrust, and you can see now that it is heading, that is going to be heading down a little bit. We are at our suicide burn countdown, and we want to keep it at like pretty much this point. Like this is what I'm looking for. Like when it gets down to negative, that's when it's dangerous, and that's where we start to pitch up to reduce our vertical speed. Because we are heading down towards the surface at 122 meters per second at this point, but we are slowing that down. What I'm trying to do right now is reduce our surface horizontal velocity as much as possible as we head down. We are 8 kilometers from the surface, and our suicide burn countdown is coming up again, so I am reducing our pitch. So yeah, this is basically the method that I'm going to be using to try to get us to the surface. This is feeling very much again like the mission that I had run last time, so I'm feeling optimistic, although this is one of the dicier missions that I have run. Alright, so we are full burn, impacting the surface very soon. 30 seconds until impact. We still have 74 seconds worth of fuel. We are putting just above the surface because we are coming down at 100 meters per second. I'm going to actually up our pitch a little bit so that we can cut our vertical speed while we are getting low, because we are coming down to 2 kilometers here pretty quick. Under 2 kilometers, 80 meters per second. Let's pitch up a little bit more because we want to be just about ballistic at this point. Or not ballistic, we want to be heading just about straight up and down at this point. Okay, horizontal velocity is 130. Suicide burn countdown is falling away. That is fine. Vertical speed is low. All right, all of our velocities are very, very low at this point. We are 400 meters above the surface. All right, I am slowing down because we are just about out. There, let's just cut this as much as we can, and there we go. There we go. We have cut it so that we are coming straight down. Our thrust to weight ratio is potentially 5. I don't know what our actual thrust to weight ratio is right now, but we are still descending very slowly. We have 13 seconds of fuel left, and we are coming down in about 11 seconds. So that is how close this is about to be. I'm going to switch this to just straight up. It's going to rotate us around for some reason. So I'm keeping our speed at about 6.2 meters per second, and then I'm going to up the throttle a little bit to cut our velocity because we want to spend as little time doing this as we can. 60 meters per second of fuel remaining. Increasing our throttle to bring our velocity down to the surface. We have landed. We have landed on the surface, and oh my god, the springs. Oh my god, the springs. Hold on. Oh, we're tilting over. Why are we tilting over so bad? Okay, turn the springs on all these, for God's sake. Ah, goodness. Okay. Are we okay? I think we're okay. I think we did it. We've done it, ladies and gentlemen. We have landed Lisa Kim on the surface. We had no 1202 alarms like Apollo 11 had, no big software malfunctions, but we did have only one single burn that we had to just very, very carefully throttle and measure during that entire descent. But we have done it with 39 meters per second, 5 seconds of fuel remaining. that was as measured as close as it could possibly have been. But we did it. We're on the moon. We are here, landed with crew on the surface of the moon. Now we have to plant a flag. Don't forget the picture, and then return home safely, but there's plenty of science to be done before we go. So let's go ahead and get these ladders down. We have the solar panels that are catching some of the sunlight, just a little bit of the sunlight. But let's take a look at what this all looks like for us. We have 2 days of electric charge. That is just fine. I'm really not worried about that. But yeah, ladders are extended. We are ready to go there. One last thing is our surface sample and analysis. Let's go ahead and activate those. You can see the little thing just kind of reaching down from underneath the skirt, reaching down to take a sample of the lunar surface to bring up, just in case it's a different type of sample than you can get from an EVA. And that's reaching up, and there you go. And we'll do the analysis as well. And while that's happening, we are going to let Lisa Kim enter a rest period. That's right, just like in Apollo 11, where there was about 6 or 7 hours in between the power descent and landing on the moon and the first step out onto the lunar surface, we are going to end this episode here. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that, and I will see you next time.